Everybody has a story, and every story needs to be heard. On this podcast, we are talking with each member of the General Conference Leadership Council. I'm your host, Alyssa Truman, and this is ANN Profiles. Today, I am here with Magdiel Pérez Schulz. I'm going to tell you in a second why I got tripped up on that. And he is the assistant to the president here at the General Conference. Hello, Magdiel.
How are
Magdiel.
you,
Did I get
Alyssa?
that right?
You did.
Okay.
You did.
We were just talking before this about how people trip up your name because they call you Magdiel,
Magdiel.
but it's Mag
D.
D
L.
L. So Magdiel. Magdiel.
And don't worry about the name. I've been called even worse.
I'm
ways
sure,
of-
but I want to get it right here on Profiles.
And you know what sometimes happens is that people call on the phone. Can I talk to Mrs. Magdiel?
No.
Yes, it's me. And people wait like 2 or 3 seconds until they say, well, I'm sorry. It happens.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, so now that we know how to pronounce your name correctly, which I probably will trip up throughout this. I'll probably go back and forth. You're the assistant to the president. It means you're the assistant to Ted Wilson because he is currently serving as president. Mm-hmm. What does that exactly mean? Because back in the day, you hear the term assistant, you would think like you were the secretary. So you're out there opening his mail and, writing all the things and scheduling all the appointments, which I know I'm guessing you have a little bit that you do with that. But what does it mean to be the assistant to the president?
Well, perhaps I can tell you what it is not the assistant to the president.
Okay.
You have to remember that we have administrative secretaries, administrative assistants, and then assistants to the president. And in a few words, what the assistant to the president does is he counsels. Not that I'm a big person, but I talk to the president about the different issues that are happening within the building. In other parts, my job description would be chief of staff. In other organizational, federal institution, that's what it's called. I get to introduce people to the General Conference, to what the General Conference is. I get to chair a few meetings that the president's asked me to do. Sometimes I would go to meetings that the president should have been there, but he's traveling or he's not around. So he asked me to attend those meetings because of the fact that you work so close with the president. I've gotten, in the 8 years that I've been working with him, I've gotten to know quite a lot of the way he thinks, the way he wants things to be done. So when I go to a meeting, when I go to another institution invited because of my position, most people will tend to think, well, whatever he says, it's probably what the president would have said if he was here. So most of my day goes in meetings, one after the other. I do get to respond to quite a few emails that are sent to him, which are of a more delicate matter. So one of the things that I tell people about responding on behalf of the president on some of those emails is that the email, if you read it, you probably can read it in 5 minutes, 3 minutes, but it took me about an hour to write them because you have to be very precise. You have to use your thoughts very well expressed because what you're responding to, what you're addressing on those emails is usually something delicate, and you are portraying what the president would have said if he had the chance to respond to that email or to that phone call.
So no pressure.
No
pressure to get that right.
No pressure when I sleep.
When you sleep. I love it. So how long have you been serving in that role?
This year, it's going to be my 8th year.
Okay, so you've been here for 8 years, which means that you have not been here all your life because you're older than 8 years old.
I am a little bit
Novel
older than
concept here.
that.
So let's talk a little bit about your childhood. Let's go back to the very, very beginning. I know you're from South America. I know you're not from Brazil. You're probably happy that I know that, although it was actually my tech team who reminded me. Where were you born? And tell me a little bit about your parents.
Okay, I was born in Iquique. It's a city in the north of Chile, near the border with Peru.
I was guessing Argentina, so I was wrong.
No, but you were probably half wrong. My mom is Argentinian.
Okay, so I was close-ish.
And most of my family is from Argentina. So, but you'll understand why I was born in Chile. My dad is a pastor, and when he was on his last year at the seminary in Chile, at that time, the Chilean seminary, Adventist seminary, only had 3 years of theology. So when he finished that, there was a conference that wanted him to work with them as a pastor, told him, we want to send you over to Argentina so that you can finish there your 4th year of seminary. He went there, and I have a couple of fun stories to tell you about what happened when he went there. Because my dad, he was a Catholic during his childhood. But at 21, 22 years old, he was converted to Seventh-day Adventist.
Do you know how?
I know, and it's an inspirational story for me. But we'll talk about that a little later.
Okay.
And so he went to Argentina. He was single, and he knew he wanted to marry, and he knew that he only had 1 more year to do that. And when he arrived in Argentina, he was 29 years old. He had studied seminary, so he was 29 years old. And when he got to the college, Argentina, River Plate University now, he went into the dining room, the cafeteria, as we call it, and he went to sit with 3 ladies that were seated there, students, because he told himself, I need to find somebody that I can marry. I want to find someone that I can marry. And my mom at that time, my dad was 29, my mom was 18 years old.
Okay.
So he sat by her, he started talking to her and to the other girls. And my mom told the other girls, when he went to leave the tray on its place, does this guy think this is elderly people retirement home? Oh, no. So old. Because he looked a little older than what he was. 2 months later, they were dating. And
Be careful what you say.
you have to be careful what you say. And the other fun story about that is that my dad's dorm roommate was a red-headed guy, big blue eyes, and he told him, "Listen, I want you to help me out. I saw this girl that I liked, and I would want to get to know her." He was also a seminary student, and if God wants it, perhaps we will get married. So this guy tells me, sure, I'll help you out. At dinner tonight, let's sit together and you show me which one it is. My mom has your color here. She's
I have a feeling I know where this is going to go. I'm enjoying this conversation.
And so when they got to the cafeteria, my dad said, they sat on a table and they started looking at all the girls as they came into the cafeteria. And suddenly this girl comes up and my dad tells him, that's her. And this guy tells my dad, you're going to have to ask somebody else to help you because that's my sister.
I knew it.
And so, but things happened, and at the end of that year, they got married. And my dad always laughs about the following thing because he graduated, they got married 2 days after the graduation. He took her to their honeymoon to Chile, and they've been in honeymoon for the last 61 years.
Oh, I love that. So
So
did the brother-in-law end up?
he
They
finally
worked through.
accepted.
Okay, it's like they worked through that one, right?
So they went to Chile. The conference sent him over to the city, Iquique, and a few months later, 9.5 months later, I was born. They were in a rush to have kids. And we're 4 boys at home.
4 boys.
Uh-huh.
Wow, she had her hands full.
Oh, she did. My mom did. So I was born in Iquique, but being a PK, we were there for about 2 years, and then my dad got a call to go to the seminary to be a teacher and a dean of students at the dorm. We stayed there for 3 years, and then he got a call to be department director at the North Chile mission. So we went there. After 4 years, he got a call to be head of a department also in another conference in the south of Chile. So to tell you something, I always wanted to know where I had been born. And Iquique, it's 3,000 miles from where I grew up, the rest of the places where I grew up. So I was 30 years old when we had an Easter week evangelism, and I was working at the Chile Union at that time. So all the people from the union went to Iquique for this evangelistic campaign, a week. So I was excited because I was going to know the city where I was born. And as soon as I got off the plane, I told the taxi driver, please take me to the hospital. He looked at me and said, are you okay? Is something wrong with you? I said, no. The thing is, after 30 years, I'm back in the city where I was born, and I want to know the hospital. I want to see the hospital where I was born. He told me, bad news for you. That hospital was old, that they tear it apart about 10 years ago. It's a brand new one. So I missed that opportunity. But that's where I was born.
You know, the hospital where my daughters, I have 3 daughters, has been torn down. And when I went back to where I was born, it had also been torn down. So I can commiserate. It's sad. So your dad has always been involved in ministry your entire life. So mission, ministry, kind of, we're going to say it runs through your bloodstream. Tell me a little bit about your mom. What did she do? What influence did she have in your early childhood years?
We usually tease our dad and my mom that we were really brought up by my mom and not by my dad. Why? My dad, he's an evangelist, and most of the work he did for the conferences was as an evangelist. And at that time, I'm talking
A couple years ago.
45, 50 years ago, most of the evangelistic campaigns that the church did, at least in Chile, they would go for 3 months, 2 months, never less than a month. So my dad would travel a lot. And he would be away for a month, 2 months, 3 months at a time. And you can imagine that that meant that my mom had a lot to do with our
4 boys.
raising the 4 boys. She's a jewel. She is 78 years old now. My dad is 90 and probably more fit than I am. But my mom, the 4 of us, we always tell her how much we admire her will to raise 4 boys. She did everything she could so that we would always admire the church, be respectful to the church and to the ministry that my dad had.
What does that look like in practical terms?
I could tell you that my mom took us to church every Sabbath, and she's a good pianist. So she was a pianist at our local church. That meant that she needed to be there half an hour before the service started at 9:30. So we all were there 9 o'clock in the morning. Although she was born in Argentina, but she is of German descent. As a matter of fact, she spoke German until she went to school, primary school. So she's very methodical, and she kept us in line. And I would say that Mom, she always did her best so that, as I said before, we would cherish the church, and we did. Sadly, I have to say that most of my friends from childhood that were pastor kids, there were times in their lives in which they went out of church. Many of them returned. Many of them went one foot out, one foot in. But I admire my mom because she, in a kind way, she helped us. And we were always involved in church. Church choir, Pathfinders, you name it, we had to be there.
All right, what was your favorite Pathfinder honor?
Nuts.
Knots. Knot time. Can you still do like the sheep shank and the bow line and the? Yeah, I remember I had knots and knots advanced. I don't think I could do more than 4 or 5 of them anymore, though. So let's talk about these more like your school years. Were you able to attend Adventist education? Was that a thing in Chile? Tell us a little bit about your schooling.
It was a blessing for us that we always, when we moved around, when the church asked my dad to do different things in different conferences, we always were moved to places where we had Adventist schools. And I have to recognize that whatever good I have in me was because of my dad, my mom, and Adventist education. I studied primary school in Temuco, which is a city in the south of Chile. I did 2 years of high school in Fairview Junior Academy, which is located in Loma Linda, California. My dad, the division sent my dad to study public health in Loma Linda, so we studied there in an Adventist school, of which I still communicate with some of my teachers from that time.
Let's pull that thread a little bit. Let's talk about that. Why? What did they do that made you want to have that connection?
Because of the impact that they made in my life.
Tell me about one of them.
I'm going to talk about, and I'm not going to be fair because I'm going to focus on one teacher, and there were many.
It's okay.
But one of those teachers was Mr. Lacey, Stephen Lacey. He was an English teacher. He was from England. And he was teaching there at Fairview Junior Academy in Highland, California, about 15 minutes away from Loma Linda. And he would start each one of his classes with a prayer. But not only with a prayer, but he would ask different people, different students, for something to pray about. And when you're a teenager, not that you really want to stick to or say anything, but he would do that. The kind way in which he treated me. Remember that when I went to that school and when we came to the U.S. at that time, I didn't speak a word of English, one word of English. And I'm going to tell you something so funny, because now I think that kids right now from other cultures, from other countries, they grow with English. It might not be their mother tongue, but because of internet, because of social media, because of movies,
Television, whatever. Yeah.
they understand quite a lot of English. Back in my time, the only movie that I saw in English was one that my dad used to use that was a subtitle called Johnny Lingo. It was an Adventist movie.
I know about Johnny Lincoln.
What was it, a 20-minute video or movie, 25-minute movie that he used in his evangelical campaign. So that was all the English I knew. And the first week I was at school, there was a national test that they did. And imagine, they gave me this booklet. I didn't know. I mean, all I knew was name. So I wrote my name, Magdiel Pérez Schulz.
Got that one right.
And then it had something else. So I just stood there on my desk looking at it, thinking about Chile and what we were doing in the U.S. And Mr. Lacey, he came up to my desk. He saw that I wasn't writing anything or answering anything or reading anything. So, but he understood, of course, that I wasn't understanding a thing. So he pointed where I had written my name. He pointed that I should write something there. But to me, it didn't make any sense. What was that word that was written there? So he said, M or F. I looked at him, M or F. I don't know. So he told me, put an M. Then I came to understand that what he had wanted me to, whether I was a male or a female. I didn't even know in English how to say that I was a male.
No.
So, but he was so kind. I learned so much from, he was a history and English teacher. He was so kind that I've corresponded with him through the years. He's got Facebook, and last year I had a trip over to Washington State, to Seattle, for some commitments that I had. And I knew that he lived about 2 hours away from Seattle. So I went to see him. I took a little time, drove an hour and a half to see him, just to thank him for what he had done to us, for us.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that there's often so many people who reflect Christ's love in our lives. They talk to us. They guide us so much on our journey, and we don't get the chance often later in life to let them know what a huge impact. I have a music teacher, and about every 3 years, it just happened recently, I just feel this need that I need to write Mr. Bowler. And I just let him know where I'm at within my life, what the lessons he taught me, how I'm using them. He was my music teacher, but he had this saying, and I've applied it to every area of my life, my whole life. And so he just randomly gets these emails from me letting him know that, hey, I still remember you, and I'm still applying what you taught me.
And that's not only important for you and me, because it's a way of thanking somebody for whatever he did, as little as it could have been, but it meant a difference to you. It could even be the fact that you're right now at church because of what something special, out of the ordinary that somebody did. But it's not only good for us, but it's also good for those people. Imagine Mr. Lacey, I think he's close to 80 years old, 78 or something like that. And to have one of his former students, I was only a student of him for a year and a half, but someone to make us a little trip just to visit. He's a widow. He lost his wife a few years ago, and she was also a teacher there at the academy. But to have someone come up and say, thank you for what you did for me. He told me, these are the words that he used, because I went to see him on a Friday afternoon. He said, you made my week, my dear. But then he said, you made my month and my year.
I think people are starving To feel loved. Many people are lonely. Even if you aren't widowed, you can feel lonely. And I think we can get discouraged easily. Like, you give your life to serve. Teachers, that's what they do. They serve. It's totally service. And especially in the years where you're teaching, parents will be upset with them. Kids, especially in high school years, are maybe not the easiest to deal with. To feel appreciated and valued, especially so many years later, I think we need to show more appreciation to others.
Oh, yes.
And sometimes we shouldn't wait so many years. Like if there's somebody who's impacting you now, tell them. Like we need to be more affirming in what we say. Meaningful affirmation, not just like you did a good job, but meaningful affirmation.
And the fact that you're thankful, it's something that will touch people's hearts. Remember it's even in the Bible. Jesus, he was surprised and thankful that the leopard came back to him. One. It was just one. How many thousands did he heal? But it was one that came back to him to thank him, and he acknowledged that.
Yeah.
Now, talking a little bit about my education, I was 9th and 10th grade. I did Loma Linda, Fairview Junior Academy. Then we went back to Chile. Then I did my college years in Chile.
Let's talk about those college years. So you get to the end of high school, and Magdiel decides he wants to be a what?
A history and geography teacher.
This is always one of my favorite questions because it's always interesting to find out like what high school view we have of our lives versus where God leads us. So you want to be a history and geography? We really would have been friends because those are my favorite two things too. I've always said that's what I would teach.
I have to recognize that I really like geography. History, not that much. But in Chile, because we have a different system of education, you could be a geography teacher only if you studied history because the degrees, they go together. It's history and geography teacher. So I went to college.
So what do you like about geography?
I like human geography. I like people. How is it that people move from one place to another? Migration. How is it that people come to live in a city? What's there in a city? What activities go on in a city? Human geography, which is a part, and I did my master's prelim in Australia in human geography because that's what I was passionate about.
Okay, so you actually go through all your college years and you're still on the geography track. So there's not this like come to Jesus where all of a sudden you become a pastor here.
Well, becoming a pastor was a path that I never envisioned in my life.
So you finish. You go to master's at where?
Master's prelim. Which is like an honors in geography in Monash University in Australia. And so I finished my college. I had the diploma,
degree.
History and Geography.
We're ready to teach.
But then at that time, I decided to go to Australia. I got married and went to Australia and lived there for a couple of years. But I missed the possibility of being in Chile, being a teacher. So we went back to Chile so that I could teach at the university, at the academy that the university there has, and at the university.
Okay. So you come back to teach in Chile, and you're still teaching geography history?
Well, I have to recognize, and I usually tell people, I must have been a very lousy teacher.
Oh, no.
Because the church only had me teaching for 2 years.
And we're desperate for teachers, but you only get 2.
So I went back to Chile. I started teaching history and geography, mostly geography at the university level, because I went back to teach where I had...
What is the name of the university?
Chile Adventist University.
Okay. It's still Chile Adventist University?
Well, at that time it was a college. Later on in life, it became a
So,
university.
you realize when you've kind of lived in a little small bubble. So I've lived in the North America bubble. I didn't know there was a Chile Adventist University. So now I know. Is it a big school? A little school?
It's a medium-sized school. I think they have about 3,000 students. They have about 14, 16 different degrees.
Okay.
And they've got a school of health. They've got a school of engineering. They've got a school of education.
Do you have a school of communication?
They don't.
Now I'm sad. It's okay. So you were there for 2 years teaching.
I was there for 2 years. I taught at high school and at university, and then the church decided that I needed to be the public relation vice president of the university.
Okay.
So I did that for a year. Must have been a lousy PR
Maybe you're
person.
so good at things, they just want to keep moving you to new positions. We're going to go with that.
After that year, I became the assistant to the president of the university at that time for a year. And then they needed a principal for the academy. It's a 1,000 student academy that belonged, or at that time it belonged to the university. Now it belongs to the local conference. So I was principal of the academy for 3 years, and then the church decided that I should be the secretary general of the university. I was 3 years doing that, and then 4 years, I was the vice president for academic affairs. And then the church decided that I should go to the Chile Union to be the education department and religious liberty and communication
All right, we're going to
department.
stop for a second. I feel like we just covered like 20 years of your life.
It's
You kept
about
saying
20
numbers,
years.
and I'm like, man, I should be adding all of these up. I don't even know where to start because that was a lot. That's a lot of jobs.
It was.
I mean, normally it's like, most of the people I interview, they've been pastors. And so they go from one pastorate to another pastor to another. But I mean, those are a lot of different types of jobs. So you've done PR for the university, academic dean. Did you say president of the university?
No, assistant to the president.
Assistant to the
before,
president.
yeah.
Okay, sorry. I was trying to keep up with all those things in my head. What was your favorite one? Before you get to the
I
union.
have asked myself that question many times. And it's difficult for me to say because with my wife, we decided a long time ago that in whatever position, in whatever place the Lord took us, we would be happy. And that was our attitude. So I have to say, I have enjoyed every job that I have done.
Okay, that's fair. But there's certain things that we like doing more. Like I can be happy doing every job that my bosses give me. And they give me lots of varieties of different things. But there's certain things we really love doing.
Perhaps I can say that because of the fact that I've been assistant to the president here for 8 years. I was assistant to the president of the South American division for a year, a little over a year. I was assistant to the president of the university for a year. That's probably the position that I have had the longest, or the type of work that I have had the longest. So I suppose that that's the one I like the
We'll
most.
go with it. We're gonna let you pick that one. So that, I mean, we haven't gone all the way up to SAD in here, but that's a position of a lot of trust. All of these have been positions of trust, but being an assistant, it does mean at some point you are kind of the voice of that person at different times.
It happens.
There's a lot of trust that's put into that.
And I thank God because He allows me to be that voice. And I say it with all humbleness. I don't think I'm worthy. But I decided also a long time ago that in whatever the Lord gave me to do, I would do my best on it. And yesterday I was talking to someone because I said, look, I don't think I'm that intelligent. But you've heard the saying, 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. I think I'm more on the side of the 99% perspiration. I work a lot, and I've committed to the Lord that I will always do my best.
So why work for the church? I mean, your dad worked for the church, but you said he was gone all the time. You could have taught anywhere. What kept you working for the church?
My commitment to God.
Let's talk about that. When did you make a commitment to God?
It was on my second year at college. And now that you asked me that, I don't think I've ever been asked that before. And usually I struggle when people talk about their life journey. It was this moment that I knew Jesus. It was this moment that I got baptized and I committed to the Lord. I've been my whole life a Seventh-day Adventist. Mm-hmm. My mom, her whole life. My granddad, his whole life. My great-granddad, his whole life.
Are you a fourth or fifth generation?
Fourth.
Okay.
And what else?
What else is there?
Is there? But now that you ask, in which moment I made a commitment, it was on my second year at college. There was a week of prayer at college that really touched me. And I before that, I would go every Sabbath to Sabbath school and I would study my lesson.
You were baptized?
I was baptized.
So you were baptized.
I was
before
baptized at 15 years old by my
Mm-hmm.
dad.
Okay. So you were baptized, you're doing all the right things.
Yeah. But there was never something in my life that made a difference. I was used to being an Adventist. But after that week of prayer, and it had to do a little bit because I wasn't sure that I was studying what I really wanted. I mean, I loved geography, but I questioned, to be a teacher, I like being a teacher. And I taught Sabbath school, but is it really what the Lord wants me to do? And I pray to God, Lord, show me if this is what I should do with my life, or show me something else. And that week of prayer made a difference. I said, Lord, I'm going to go with you until I die. I'll commit. And I have had offers to work outside. One of them was very tempting, but I decided for the Lord, and I'm going to die with my boots on.
Now, you also mentioned that your wife, what is her name again?
Susan.
Okay, she's precious. So you guys determined that wherever you were called, you would be happy. So we now know there's a beautiful woman in this picture. Tell us a little bit about Susan.
Susan, she's been the biggest blessing that God has given me in my life. I love her, and she's an agronomist.
Sorry, a what?
Agronomist.
Yeah, you're going to have to totally define that term.
It's an engineer that relates to earth science, crops, cultivation, and she studied that at our university in Chile. She has her master's in plant breeding.
Plant breeding?
And
so you can do plant breeding, but not communication? Sorry, keep going. Tell us a little bit more about it.
She did her doctorate in genetics, plant genetics, and today she's finishing her postdoc at the USDA.
You mean like today?
Today. This is her last day as a postdoc student. She's an eternal student, but she is on a scholarship. So, and Susan,
Tell me a couple character traits that you love the most about her.
one of them is related to what I've just spoken. She's very positive. I remember we were in Chile, and I had worked for the church already for close to 18 years, 19 years. And we received a call to go to Ecuador as the director of education department, communication department, and religious liberty again. And I wasn't that sure. I mean, it was a church calling me, but she said, Magdiel, we committed our lives to God. If the church tells us that we should go to the Antarctica, we will go. She's very positive. She will take any challenge and head on. The other thing that I love about her is that she's a very caring person. We have 13 years age difference. And she came into my life in a very difficult moment in my life. I had 3 kids from a previous marriage. And at that time, I was the Secretary General of the university, and I had to take care of those 3 kids by myself. And my kids loved her before I did.
Interesting.
And she cares so much for them, for me, for God's church. She's more active at our local church than I am. Not that I'm not committed. There's so much travel.
A lot, yeah. It's okay. I let anybody who's like in a certain position above off the hook when we talk about like involvement. You can only do so much.
Yeah. So those 2 things, very positive woman and very caring.
Something else she is, which you've alluded to, but she's faithful to the call of God, wherever that may be. And that's not just positive, that's a level of faithfulness. Because it's not her call, necessarily, except for she's decided it is. That your call is her call. It's the family's call.
And I would tell you that it's been more difficult for her than for me.
It generally is.
She had a good position when we were in Chile. She was a professor at the university when we got the call to go to Ecuador. Now, Ecuador and Chile both countries speak Spanish, and cultures, Hispanic, Latino culture, but very different at the same time. When we went to Ecuador, she didn't have a job. When we received the call to go to Brazil to work at the division, she lost the job she had in Ecuador.
We don't often think about that when people are voted in at GC sessions. You know, it's like, oh, let's vote this. There's a sacrifice of family. If you have a family, it's not just this person who's being called, which sounds fantastic. There's a spouse who may lose a job. There's children who may lose schools that they've been a part. There's a sacrifice that comes for the whole family when we follow the calls that God gives us. So I've always said it's not a call for a person. It's the call for the family.
For the family.
And if we're not equally as committed to following God's call, it's never really going to work out. So,
but you know, you have to trust God.
Mm-hmm.
And in her case, just looking at her, just knowing how positive she is, in each one of those calls, in each one of those moves, she has had to start from zero. But she has always been able to say, God gave me so much that he would have never given me if we would have stayed in the previous place.
So I'm going to ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Since you served as public affairs, religious liberty, calm, communication, and what was the other thing?
Education.
Education. So
And Sabbath school.
and so you just had a couple
in
jobs.
some of our countries, we have
wear
to do a lot.
few hats. So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm the assistant director of communication. What advice would you give me?
I'm sorry?
What advice would you give me? You've served in this communication role in multiple places. What advice would you give me?
Make it a must for you to always portray the church as God's church. Whatever you do, if you have to write an article, if you have to interview someone, if you have to talk in front of the camera, always make sure that you portray our church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, a Christian church, that's God's church.
Okay. Thank you. I just thought I would at least ask for some advice since you've served more years in it probably than I have. How many years did you serve in those roles?
In communication in Chile was 3 years. In Ecuador it was 2 years.
You'd already beat me just in your Chilean years. So you're safe. So from Ecuador, where do you go?
We had been in Ecuador for 2 years. We were having the time of our lives in Ecuador. Ecuador is such a small country, but in an hour drive, you can be in a rainforest from Quito. Quito is 12,000 feet above sea level. That's the capital of Ecuador.
Okay.
You drive an hour and a half and you're in the rainforest. You drive 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and you're in the Pacific Ocean. You drive 2 hours towards the other side, and you are in the Amazon basin. We worked, and Susan became the director for children's ministries and women's ministries. And as I said, we were enjoying our work when suddenly I received a call that from the president of the division at that time, asking me if I would be his assistant. So from there was to Brazil.
Now, Brazil speaks another language. So
Portuguese.
far you've been in Spanish-speaking countries. Did you already know Portuguese?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
And
I'm curious about how that works.
And, you know, for Spanish-speaking people and Portuguese-speaking people, the two languages are fairly similar. I would even say 50% same words, same meanings.
Figure it out.
But because they're so similar, sometimes you even invent words because you think you're saying it in the other language, but you're not saying it understandably for them or for them. Because they're so similar. So we had to learn Portuguese, and praise the Lord, God has given me and Susan that talent, that gift. I learned. I will never forget the first time I had to preach in Portuguese.
Tell us about it.
I must have been in Brazil for 2 months, 2.5 months.
2 months.
And they invited me to preach at a local church near Brasilia, where the division is. So I went there. I must have repeated that sermon to myself about 10 times in Portuguese. My Portuguese.
Are you sure it was in Portuguese?
My Portuguese. And so I went there Sabbath morning. I preached. I heard a few amens, so I got excited about it. And usually after, in our culture at least, when you finish your sermon, you go to the back of the church and then you greet everyone as everyone goes back to their homes for lunch. And so the two old ladies were coming in, and so I greeted them. And one of the ladies, she looked at me and she said, "Are you from Portugal?" The moment she said that, I felt so, I mean, my Portuguese is so good that she thinks I'm from Portugal. It's like people saying to you, did you learn your English in England?
From Oxford.
So I say, no. I am not from Portugal. I'm from Chile. Okay. She turned around to the other lady and she said, I can never understand the Portuguese. So all the height that I was
That
getting
just
to.
brought you down a lot. That just brought you down. That was like humility right there.
Yep, right. In 2 seconds. So we had the privilege of working at the division for a year as assistant to the president, and then the division chose me as the secretary of the division.
So executive secretary.
Uh-huh.
So you're in Brasilia, which, by the way, is a beautiful location.
It is. As I said, we have learned to make the best wherever we are. And we enjoyed Brazil the same way we enjoyed Ecuador and the same way we enjoyed Chile.
Same way
and all
you
the
enjoy
other.
Silver Spring?
I have.
Okay.
I have enjoyed Silver Spring, Maryland. It's an attitude. Like I said,
Yes.
it's got to be an attitude. But it's not only an attitude. I enjoyed working for the church, so I enjoy being here.
All right, so I have a question. We're going to tangent for a few seconds here. Do you have a hobby? Do you have something you like to do?
Both Susan and I, we like to go hiking.
Okay. Like cute hiking or like mountain hiking?
No, cute hiking. Okay. I'm a little afraid of heights, so
Me
you
too.
wouldn't
Me too.
you wouldn't find me climbing up a
You're
mountain.
not doing Everest.
But we camp and we try to do that as often as we can. Go to national parks. We like that.
All right. Have you been to many national parks in America?
I have.
All right. So I've been to about 200 national park sites or more. So my husband's on my bucket list is to actually do all of them. So I have to
How
ask
many
you.
are there?
So within the national park system in America, because we have national parks and national monuments, national historics, I could get into a whole thing, but that's not what this is about. Last I remember, it was over 450. So yeah, we've done most of the Southwest, and we've done everything in Maryland, Virginia. We started taking our kids there, so we love road tripping. Again, this is not about me, but I love national parks. Is my point. So, what is your favorite national park in America that you've been to?
I have 2.
Okay, tell me. I'm gonna see if they're in my top 5.
Now I have 3.
Oh, okay, that's fine. We can do top 3.
Yosemite,
Okay.
Grand Canyon, and Acadia National.
Acadia is beautiful.
It's beautiful.
We have a different list, though. That's okay. I've actually never been to Yosemite. My husband has been there. He was brought up in California. So he said that once I get there, I'm going to have to bump something down because it's pretty amazing. I love Zion. Have you been to Zion?
I have.
I love just like the sheer cliffs above me. See, Grand Canyon scared me a little because, again, not a big fan of heights. So it felt like the wrong direction. At the bottom of Zion, that one was pretty. But yeah, so I love the whole national park system. It's whatever country you go to, it's
nature. It's because of nature. You know, one thing that I still don't know how I'm going to tell the Lord when we're in heaven, because I know that there won't be mountains in heaven. But I find mountains so beautiful.
Does it actually say there won't be? I mean, like, what if he makes them as formations just because they're beautiful?
I'm hoping on that.
I think he will. So I think that, like, because he realizes that it's something that brings beauty and joy and stuff to our lives. It doesn't have to represent what it represents here. Like, I think we can get mountains, okay? And we're not going to be scared of heights. So you and I can go hiking with our spouses up the mountains.
You know what,
and
Susan?
we won't be scared.
You know what Susan tells me? You think of mountains and national parks as the best that God created. But you have to think that He is preparing for us something that eyes have not seen or imagination. So imagine if we find that so beautiful
What
the
heaven
most.
is going to be like.
What is it going to be like?
Oh, man, it's going to
We're
be
probably
amazing.
going to laugh at it when we think, in earth I thought that mountains were the best.
We're going to be like, hey, remember when we had that interview on Earth? It's like, yeah, we don't even know what to call this thing. All right, so you become the executive secretary. Thank you for my tangents. I appreciate you being okay with them. So you're the executive secretary of South America Division. This is it's one of the main leadership because you have president, executive secretary, and treasurer. So this is kind of, although you kind of have joked about how you weren't good enough at multiple things, it actually seems like God continues just to build skills in you, a variety of skills. Now, in a secretary, one of their functions is to kind of like be I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. I want to call it the rule book follower, but that's the wrong way to say it. But you're the custodian of the working policy. Would that be a good way of describing it?
It is.
What is it like, though? Because the roles you've had previously are not necessarily custodians of working policy. And all of a sudden you're having to learn how to navigate bylaws and structure and all of this. Tell me a little bit about taking on executive secretary.
It was a challenge for me because, as you said, the only secretary experience I had was back at the university when I was the Secretary General, which had a lot to do with policies and rules, but perhaps, and maybe I'm confessing something here,
It's okay. Confession is good for the soul.
I didn't like that much policies. I enjoyed other parts of the
So
work.
it's not your favorite part of your job.
I had to do it, and we had to review them, and I had to learn quite a lot. And the president and the treasurer at meetings would come up to me and say, "What does policy say about this?" And I would, it says this and that, and I always had it in my pocket. It says here, that, and that. But you know what I like more about being the executive secretary is that we usually deal with church members, church membership, statistics, and
Are you a statistics guy?
no, I'm not. No.
But you did like human geography.
Yes,
So there is
yes.
this
Yeah,
element
yeah.
of
But I
that.
like I'm more of a human, not humanistic. How do you go? A human
you like humans.
relations.
Relationship.
So most of my geography had to do with people, human geography. But in the job that I had, or the ministry I did as executive secretary, we developed what it's called now in the World Church, ACMS.
Was that under?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
Thank you. On behalf of the World Church.
And
Explain what ACMS is.
ACMS is Adventist Church Management System, in which we developed at the South American Division a program in which all the data from the church members was in one site. We usually had it in paper, we usually gave reports, but we brought it all under a system. So we could actually know, and we could actually communicate with a church member. We had the information on how he became a member, what activities he had done in the church, what were his preferences to work in a local church. So we brought all that statistical part, we brought it together. And I loved that. And one of the things that I enjoyed the most was when we were able to go to different unions to have all the church clerks together of a conference or of a union, 200, 300, 400 of them, and explain to them how it worked, how the system was good not only for them, for their local church, but now church transfer could be done not by mail, but by the click of a button. So that was what I liked the most. And also, a second program that we did in the division there is a program that we call Encounter, in which church clerks, because the church manual talks about that, church clerks coordinate the work with the former members, trying to reach the former members to
I
bring
did not
them
know
back to
that.
church.
I like it. So, how long did you serve as secretary?
6 years.
Okay. So, is your next jump up to here? So, tell me about that because this is not, are you an elected position?
Elected.
You are an elected.
No, now? No, it's appointed.
What did,
Elected position is a secretary at the South
yes.
American, but
when
here
you
is
came
an
here, it was an
appointed.
appointed position. So, it's not like you come to a GC session and your name gets brought up and all of a sudden you're elected. So, appointed, it's a little bit of a different thing. Tell me about getting the call to come here.
A good friend, Orville Parchman, he was the assistant to the president. He was the assistant to the president for Elder Paulson and later for Elder Wilson. And he was retiring. And one day, the executive secretary now of the General Conference, at the time the president of the South American Division, Pastor Kohler, he said, Magdiel, Pastor Wilson has an interest that perhaps you could be his assistant. I didn't want to move from Brazil at that time. But again, whatever the church decides will go. And I said, if the church one day asks me that I should go to the Antarctica and preach to the penguins, I'll do it because that's what the church wants from me. So I came here and I did not repent.
So you become assistant to the president. You've been here for 8 years. In reflecting on everything that brought you here, what would you say is one of the ways that you've seen God move the most in your life?
Probably it's not directly connected to the work that I do, but the ministry that God asked me to do. As I told you, my degree is history and geography. I've got a master's in educational administration. How did I become a pastor? I have to recognize that early in my youth, I thought about becoming a pastor, following my dad's example. But there was one thing that I didn't like about ministry, and that was the fact that my dad was never home. So when I was considering what to do in college, I kept pastoral ministry out of my sight because I did not want to have my children and my spouse, my wife, or leave them alone for so long. But I was always involved in things that pastors do. And my whole work, I've been working for the church already for 35 years, has always been involved with pastors' ministry. And deep in my heart, and I don't think I ever told anyone, not even my wife, I wish that I could have been a pastor. So when I went to the division as an assistant to the president, people used to call me pastor. And I would say, no, I'm not a pastor. I'm a teacher. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a teacher. But that hurt because in my heart, I would have wanted to be a pastor, but I wasn't. Uh, and one day this church decided, we want to ordain you. That's something that will stay in my heart, and I will be thankful to God in my heart forever, because my life was on a very different path than that of a minister. Not, I worked alongside, education and health are the right and the left arm of the gospel. But God gave me that blessing of being called a pastor, an ordained pastor. For me, that's the highlight of my years working for the church.
I love that. Ministry looks different in many ways. And every time I've interacted with you, I can tell you have a pastoral heart. You might be in administration. Most of your experience is administrative. But you're pastoral. The way that you speak to people, the way when you talk about people, you see the whole person. And it's a very beautiful thing, because we need more people who are pastoral in their heart, even if their position has not always been that. So I'm very, very happy that I guess I can call you pastor. And thank you so much for how you have served the church for so many years, so faithfully, and allowed God to continue to lead in your story. We don't know where He opens the next door. None of us are generally here forever. This is just one door until the next door opens. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing your story of how God has guided you and where He continues to lead. We will pray that
Praise the Lord.
those doors will open and you will walk through them.
Praise the Lord for what He does for you, for me, as we work for the church.
Amen.
And thank you for inviting me.
Well,
I have
thank you
to
for coming.
recognize in front of the public that I was nervous of being here.
Almost everybody says that. To be fair, everyone comes in, they're scared.
What am I going to say? I mean, there's no script, at least an outline. This is what you'll be talking about. To talk for over an hour.
I know, I love it, because everyone comes in and they're like, I don't know what to say. I'm scared. I'm not sure I'm going to have enough time. And I'm like, we're just going to start from childhood. And we're going to go through your life. The goal of this is to sit down as two friends and just to explore our lives, because I feel like there's so many people who want to do this. They want to get to know their leaders. They want to understand them. They don't have the chance. And so over our nice mugs of water, they get to sit in and to be able to hear the stories. And I think it's so important for us to know how God has led His leaders. I think it's fundamental to being able to have faith and trust in the way the church operates, is to know that God has led His leaders and He will continue to do so in the future. We are not here because we politicked. We are here because most of us, well, neither you nor I, ironically, but are elected by a body of believers who have the Holy Spirit and prayer to say, these are the leaders that will work for the church. These are the people who will represent us globally. And it's a high calling. It's one that needs to come with great humility. And I think even for those of us who are appointed, like you and I, it is a privilege to be able to serve.
It is. And that word, serve, it's really what should be our goal in whatever position the Lord gives. I usually tell people that my position, it's one that probably 22 million Adventists would want to have. And God gave me that privilege. Mm-hmm. I don't deserve it. But I want to serve Him in the best way possible. And I will never forget a sentence, a theme, I don't know how to say it in English, that Spicer had, and he wrote it to his wife when he was talking about the fact that they had elected him as a president of the General Conference. And I saw this in a T-shirt. The first time I saw it in a T-shirt from students from Andrews University. It says, "In the church, there are no posts of honor, only posts of service."
That's so beautiful.
And that is what we should strive for. Jesus was here as a servant. He was the king of the universe, but he was here as a servant. Whatever position we have, we should always follow him. We are servants.
Amen. Thank you, Magdiel.
God bless you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Anna in Profiles with my special guest, Magdiel Pérez Schulz. If you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, YouTube channel, wherever it is you're tuning in from today. I don't want you to miss any future episodes. Thank you for spending this time with us, and join us next time as we continue to get to know the life stories of more inspiring people.